Hello and welcome everyone to our 31st session of Hello Casa. My name is Michael and today I'll be talking to Dana Wallace from San Francisco, California. Dana is a real estate agent and broker specialized for properties in the cannabis industry. So I'm super excited to talk about her. She's an expert in the entire field, knows a lot about it, about the how to cultivate it, how to get all the licenses and do everything which is important around it. So, Dana, welcome to the show. Thanks for your time. And why don't you introduce yourself to our audience?
Thank you so much, Michael. It's such a pleasure to be featured here. So thank you again for inviting me. And yes, as you mentioned, I own a real estate brokerage that specializes specifically in legally compliant cannabis properties. And now our farm bill just passed here in the US, and California has just implemented their registration process so that farmers can grow hemp, medicinal and industrial. So I'll be focused on those properties and projects as well. So it's a really exciting time.
Perfect. Um, why don't you, first of all, guide us through a little bit about the difference between recreational and medical cannabis? I think there's a lot of talks going on, maybe also a lot of rumors, but in fact, maybe also wrong information fluctuating in the internet. So why don't you give us a quick difference about that?
Sure. So here in California, we started off with medicinal. So we voted Prop 215 in, and under 215, you would be able to grow cannabis plants under a medical collective. So what those farmers did is they would register patients who had received a medical card from a doctor for various ailments or stress or whatever it was. They received a medical card, which allowed them to then walk into collective dispensaries, which were only under the medicinal Prop 215 to purchase cannabis from those dispensaries. And also the farmers would register patients with their collective, and then they were allowed to grow so many plants per patient. So if authorities showed up on their farm, they would literally just have stacks and
Hmm.
stacks of paperwork on each patient. Um, and then in 2016, we voted Prop 64 in. California voted for the recreational commercial market. So those collectives have now gone to the wayside. You no longer need a medicinal card to go in and purchase cannabis products from a dispensary. And those dispensaries now fall under the recreational commercial market in most cases as well. And so if you're over the age of 21, you have to show your ID and you can walk in and now purchase your cannabis products legally. So that was a huge win for California. And with hemp, there is two strains that can be grown. One is medicinal for CBD. And in order for that plant to be legal, it has to fall under 0.03%
Hmm.
THC. So the plant has to test out. And I think other countries follow that same guideline in most cases as well.
And and the way I understood it is that the only difference or the difference between hemp and marijuana, that's actually the particularly difference between it. Like it's the level of THC which is being included, which is included in the stray or in the cannabis itself. We're not talking about like different sorts or different particularly breeds of cannabis. It's seriously like the definition is based on the percentage of THC which is included in that. Is that more or less the
Yes,
definition?
it is. Yeah. So cannabis itself can be grown to have certain high levels of CBD as well, but it's not considered legal under the Farm Bill. Only CBD that comes from hemp plants is considered legal to be sold in products and lotions and tinctures and that kind of stuff. And so that's where the difference is.
And
It's
and that's
Yeah.
Sorry, and that's where also your business lies. So you are especially like focusing all the properties you're selling are especially for the cultivation of hemp cannabis, correct?
No, so all of the properties that I entered the cannabis industry with when I aligned my brokerage with cannabis, those were strictly cannabis plants.
Hmm.
And now we voted in the U.S. Farm Bill passed, and California has implemented a registration process. And so now you are able to grow hemp just as if you were growing tomatoes
Yeah.
or any other agricultural commodity product. You just need to register that you are growing hemp with the state of California and your local ag commissioner.
Okay, interesting. Um, so walk us a little bit through the process of registering your property as such.
For hemp or cannabis?
For first for hemp and then for cannabis, because I
Okay.
assume that hemp is easier than for
It is.
cannabis. Okay.
Yes. So you hit the nail on the head. Hemp is much less regulated and much, it's going to be taxed just like a regular agricultural commodity. So what's happened here in California is the state agricultural commissioner um, and the food and drug advisory department have now set up a registration process. And so basically, there's one application you fill out, you pay $900, and it serves for the state of California as you're registering as a hemp farmer who's going to grow either medicinal or industrial. And then you will also, that application will be submitted to your local ag commissioner as long as they have not put a moratorium on growing hemp. You're able to submit it to your local ag commissioner, and then they submit it to the state on your behalf as well. So it's a much more streamlined, efficient process
Mm-hmm.
and much less licensing and
So,
regulation.
so that means like one single permit for the entire state, and you don't need to go like through all the institutions and all levels of governance, which is quite
Exactly.
impressive. Okay.
Yes, that's exactly it. So when you're getting licensed for cannabis, there is tons of inspections and different things that you have to do to get through the process locally, and then you have to move forward and get your state permit, which has additional requirements. So cannabis is a very lucrative business, but there are a lot of challenges and regulations and bureaucracy to get through to become licensed locally and through the state. And so hemp is going to be a much easier process to go through.
And also now talking about also the benefits or the particularities of hemp. I mean, as I said, as I told you before the interview, I have done like very little research, but what I saw is that obviously without the psychedelic effects, which you get like in marijuana, um, hemp has so many benefits which you can use and leverage for very very strong products. So give us a little bit of maybe reasons why I should actually go for a plant or for the cultivation of hemp, and what are the potential products and what are also the potential benefits concerning concerning potential clients.
Yeah. So, well, so for one thing, like I said, the regulations are going to be much less strict, and you're not going to be taxed like you do if you're growing cannabis plants. Again, cannabis can be very lucrative, but if you are growing hemp, you have two different plants. The CBD medicinal plant looks like a big Christmas tree,
Hmm.
and that's where you're going to be able to get your non-psychoactive medicinal CBD from. So as long as you're testing out below that 0.03%, that will create. They will then do the extraction process, turn it into oils, and it will go into tinctures and lotions and gel
Hmm.
capsules and CBD infused beverages and vape pens. So pretty much edibles, any product you can think of that you would like to use CBD for. There are many, many products that will be out there for everyone's comfort level. Some people don't want to smoke a vape pen. They would rather, chew a gummy.
Mm-hmm.
And some people would rather just take the drops straight from the bottle. Some people love the infused beverages. So, it's really taking off. A lot of bigger companies. Coca-Cola is looking into an infused beverage. You've got snack companies looking into,
Mm-hmm.
putting it in their products. So some of it's going to be a little, trendy, and then others serve a really, useful, holistic, medicinal approach to treating various illnesses, from inflammation in your body with autoimmune diseases to PTSD. A lot of veterans feel that it's really helped them with their stress levels. People, claim benefits for sleep disorders. There's just so many uses
I
for
mean,
it.
exactly, the benefits are just humongous and apparent.
It is.
So,
And I truly believe in it. We have a huge opiate epidemic, not only globally, but here in the US, it's horrible. And to be able to step away from these addictive prescription medications and turn to something that's natural from a plant that's actually good for your body. We have an endocannabinoid system in our body, and these plants have cannabinoids, and it matches up together. And it's just basically, not to get too on a soapbox, but it's meant to be. It's the natural way to treat your body. So it's pretty exciting.
it definitely is. And you mentioned the term trend, and I think like there are good trends and bad trends, and the way I can obviously right now judge upon it, I think it will be a super positive trend. Like not only what it helps us concerning like for our bodies, but also
Yeah.
concerning organic growth and replacements for products which have been created in an industrialized way and maybe with a
Yeah.
strong carbon footprint, which now can be
Mhm.
done with cannabis based products in a very very green and less CO2
Oh,
emission
yeah.
way.
It's so true. I mean, we didn't get into the industrial plant either. That one grows tall like a bamboo stalk, and that can replace plastics, harmful plastics that are not environmentally friendly. It can replace, you can grow hemp in a 90-day cycle. You don't have to log trees for paper anymore.
Hmm.
It can be used for industrial purposes, hemp fiber in concrete
Hmm.
and building materials. So it's going to be able to, just as you said, um, it's going to lessen the carbon footprint to nothing,
Yeah.
because it also, the roots of the hemp plant are so deep and so tough. They
Yeah.
basically act as a rototiller
Hmm.
for the soil, and it adds back in nutrients, and it draws out harmful things that are in the soils. So some people will use it to, as a rotation crop, to clean up the soil on that property. And then the next year, they can feel good about planting more organically and having most of the harmful contents of that soil removed. So it not only has all these uses medicinally and to replace products that are not environmentally friendly, that are doing nothing but damage to the earth, it can also just rejuvenate the soil. So I can't go on about it enough.
No,
It's
that
amazing.
it's super interesting, and I actually I think I mean when I read that it even is a replacement. I mean you just mentioned concrete. I mean we're talking concrete. We're talking paint. We're talking like very very strong chemical products which
Yeah.
a natural product can now replace, which is mind blowing and transformational. And I think that
And
it cannot be overstated.
yeah, from what I understand, it's more energy efficient as a building material as well. And again, I'm not a contractor, and I'm not in construction, but there's just so many
Yeah.
features of it that are amazing. And the other thing is the CBD product in children has shown great benefits for epilepsy and seizures and minimizing those. I'm sure you guys have all heard of Charlotte's Web and just different products that are having amazing results in children
Hmm.
who, pretty much on the drugs they've been on, they're just comatose and they don't have a quality of life. And when they switch to these CBD products, it's, they get their lives back.
Yeah, absolutely. You just mentioned the one of the end products, which is oil, and what I
Yeah.
also read is another end product, which is seeds. What is when would I use a seed? Is it just? I mean,
Yeah.
let's
So
say I don't. Yeah, go ahead, please.
yeah, so I think it's like hemp hearts, and you've probably seen it in Trader Joe's. You can sprinkle it on top of your granola. You can,
Okay.
use it in food products. And there is some restrictions going on with our FDA here, the
Mm-hmm.
Food Drug Administration. Everybody's, of course, when something new enters the market and it's going to replace your giant companies, there's a lot of fuss about it, but it can be added into food products with so many nutritional benefits. It's one of those superfoods,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah. 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 Um, You also mentioned right now the that incumbents, or say from the food and beverage industry, some right now some players are jumping on it and are adapting some of the elements, the nutritional elements. Um, do you have, going into a little bit the market, do you have an overview of the market of what is right now moving? What are the tendencies? Do you see a huge threat concerning the incumbents you just mentioned, Coca-Cola and Procter and Gamble and the sorts, Nestle, or do you say, okay, they will adapt it super fast and I don't know, the new entrants, there might come up some, they will have a hard time anyway because it's super hard to attack this market.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that you're going to have some of your craft, um, holistic products.
Mm-hmm.
Whether you call them artisanal or whether just like craft cannabis or craft brews, you're going to have some companies that are going to do really well. In fact, CVS and Rite Aid here that can barely keep their CBD products on the shelf. And we're talking about, the lotions and the tinctures that help with pain and inflammation and things like that. So it's definitely taking off in a big way. But it's inevitable that the big guys are going to be coming in and, you know, putting these in their products and implementing it as well. And they'll have a leg up on the market because of their presence that's
Mm-hmm.
already there and their branding. But I think there's plenty of room
Absolutely.
for it's we're just touching the surface right
Yeah.
now, and this is definitely the time to get in and be established. Plus, there's not a lot of farms here in California. The only farms for hemp that were here before were small, and they were in collaboration with university studies.
Mm-hmm.
And so now as the industry catches up and we've got the farming equipment and the processing facilities, there will be the opportunity for so many to, establish the product lines.
Taking that as a segue concerning big companies and also the plans, how do the big new cannabis companies, how do they source right now? Like, is all of that, is that insourced, or do they also have some contractors, some partners, and me as a local farmer, cannabis farmer, am I a potential supplier for those companies?
You can be. So there's quite a few groups, bigger groups that have formed co-ops. And so they contract with the farmers to buy their end product.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's farmers who have basically just established relationships with distribution companies who will then take their product to the end user, the dispensaries. So there's quite a few different ways that your product can make it down the line to the end user.
Mm-hmm.
Um, some of the bigger companies, they have massive, square footage properties where they are growing for themselves because they, have that vertical integration model. So they not only grow the plant, they dry it, they trim it, they process it, and they turn it into their flower or vape products or their edible products. whatever it is that they have in their business model. So vertical integration is really important to those bigger companies. And unfortunately, a lot of them are their own supply chain, which can cut out our smaller farmers. And so that's been kind of a heartache for the guys that, this is their family's livelihood. It's blood, sweat, and tears. They've worked very hard. They have been, in trouble with the law before. It's been a hard journey. And they're trying to do it right, and they're trying to meet all the legal requirements and checklists that is required of them. And, I really feel for some of these farmers, because sometimes they'll get through a checklist in their municipality, in their county or their city, and the city or the county will come back and say, well, now we've changed our mind. We're going to do it this way. And they've spent all this money and time to do it the way they were asked. And then the municipality just comes back and changes it. So it's a very imperfect system with a ton of challenges. But if those guys can hang in there, it's really important that we sustain our craft cannabis farmers. It's very important.
Yeah, that's unfortunately always the case. Once there's a strong regulation on it, it mostly harms the local ones, the small ones, while the big ones can afford a huge.
They can afford that time and that money to make corrections, to go back to the drawing board and start from scratch. Where the smaller guys, they're investing pretty much their life savings and still not quite making it a lot of times, which is why, a lot of people have decided to stay, with the black market. They're still selling, they're still, but that legal cloud over their head is, I'm sure, constant source of stress.
Even though I see that right now there's a huge, let's say, ecosystem being created around the new industry, be it e-commerce shops, delivery companies, people like a lot of new stakeholders, in fact, entering the market. And that which gives me, in fact, like a lot of hope that once we have like it's kind of this disintegration of the value chain into vertical experts, we see like, okay, this is also the way we can say, okay, we don't really necessarily rely on the till rates or the organograms or the CanTrust and stuff. How do you see that?
So how do I see it kind of settling and becoming better? Is that your question?
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's a great question. And unfortunately, there's no real clear picture right now. The state of California itself is still adjusting their regulations and taxation. And then each municipality was allowed to either vote their ordinances and regulations in or ban them completely. And if they did vote their regulations and ordinances in, each municipality voted in something different based on, their either votes from their community or based on their board members, what they decided. So you can have a municipality that is allowing, multiple cultivation. So there's no cap on how many cultivation properties they'll allow, but they only allow two dispensaries and no delivery. And then they're only allowing, certain properties, manufacturing permits and licenses. So there's really no rhyme or reason. And a lot of the municipalities went in at very high tax rates, which then created a high turnover rate for anybody doing cannabis business in that municipality. They moved to the one, the next county over, because the taxes are just putting them out of business. So there really is so much to get through still. And I think it's going to, we're going to see in the next 3 years a lot of changes still to come before it really settles and becomes more streamlined and a much easier process. Lots of challenges.
I mean, right now, tell us a little bit about your business. We have now been talking about like cannabis in general. Also, you gave us a lot of expertise. If I'm interested now in a plant and in starting to cultivate, how can you help me as a potential farmer? And what is also your service offering?
So, if you're a farmer that wanted to sell your property, that's where I come into play. Or if you're a buyer or investor who wanted to purchase or lease a property to conduct cannabis business, that is where that's what I specialize in. And basically, what it comes down to is I only represent legally compliant cannabis properties.
Hmm.
So, what we do is find out where that property is. What is the status of the property being able to be licensed or permitted? Or is it still going through the process of being licensed and permitted locally? And so, where are they in that process? Or it's completely licensed, which means that they have been granted their local license from their municipality, and then they went ahead and applied for the state license.
Hmm.
Because here in California, to grow cannabis or operate a manufacturing facility or a dispensary or delivery, whatever you're doing in cannabis, you get licensed locally first and permitted, and then you apply for your state. And once you have both, you're a legal cannabis operation. California is still processing so many interim state permits, which was the temporary permit. And we have some turmoil going on because those permits are about to expire. And the permanent annual permit needs to still get processed and go out to each of our operators. And so the state is still playing catch up with
Hmm.
that, um, because legally what it says is you're supposed to have both local and state. And as long as you're operating compliant and you do have your temporary state permit, you're fine. So that would mean that your property, if you wanted to sell it and you're fully permitted and licensed, that's very attractive to an investor because the investor wants to own the real estate as an asset to lessen their risk.
Hmm.
And then they want to also lessen their risk because cannabis is a new industry and we have a lot of great areas. They also want to lessen their risk by being able to purchase a fully permitted, licensed property.
Hmm.
And so that becomes very attractive to investors and buyers in the market.
Can you give us some points, some elements which are required in order to get a license? Obviously, I don't want to have the full list, but just to get an imagination of what your municipality and also the state is requiring, in order to um, to to make it, or yeah, to give this permit.
Right. So I'll just briefly go over both land
Sure.
and warehouse. So first, if you have land, you're going to want to look at your municipality's ordinances and what they have zoned as being approved for growing cannabis. So
Hmm.
most of the time, it's going to be an agricultural property, zoned ag or diverse ag. And once you're zoned correctly, then you're able to then move forward with getting the property permitted. When you go through the permit process, you're going to have a ton of inspections. You're going to have your water source inspected and your water storage inspected. You're going to have your garden where you're either doing outdoor grows in hoop houses or commercial greenhouses, which is mixed light, where you're using artificial lighting and you have climate control features inside of there. That's all going to be inspected. And then you're going to be, the license will be processed based on the square footage in most cases that they're going to allow you to grow on.
Hmm.
So some places will cap it at 10,000 square feet of
Hmm.
flowering plant. And then other places will say you can put as many plants in there as you want. You can grow up to 22,000 square feet. You can grow an acre. Again, it comes down to what that municipality voted in or drew up as their ordinances. So it can be very confusing because maybe you live in one county and they allow acre grows, and you go to the next county and they've capped it at 10,000 square feet. So you can't judge one municipality's rules and try to say, well, that's what's going to happen over here. You
Hmm.
really have to do your research and talk to the planning departments of
Hmm.
these different municipalities to find out what you're allowed to do and all the inspections that are required.
Got it. Okay. Wow.
And then for warehouse,
Yeah.
is same thing in your municipality. They've either designated a green zone where they say, okay, any warehouse that falls in this industrial zone, we approve cultivation, manufacturing, and distribution. Um, Other places say no. If this is our zone where we're allowing cannabis activity, but you need to get a conditional use permit, which is abbreviated as a CUP. You need to get your building CUP before you can then go as an operator and get licensed to cultivate or manufacture in that warehouse. So there's many different processes and things to research to make sure your property can be compliant for getting permitted, and that you as the operator can get licensed to conduct your cannabis business.
Got it. Okay. So I see it's a um, book full of content which you are not able to study during one weekend. So it's and it's also most probably going to get changed over and over again. So you have to be on top of that all day long, I assume.
You do, because sometimes a county has wanted to catch up with all the applications, and so they temporarily put a moratorium. They'll say, we're not accepting any more applications right now for cultivation or manufacturing. Um, but we are going to open up again probably by next summer. So you know that a new application period may be opening up in the future. You just don't know when, and that they're processing what they've already got on their plate. A lot of the municipalities were understaffed as far as cannabis um, business activities went. They weren't prepared with the amount of staff they were going to need to get through the processes for everybody that was applying.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um, I have one follow-up question on the on that you say like most of the people or potentially investors who want to diversify their risk are potential buyers. I would have assumed that also farmers want to buy who want to cultivate it. Am I totally off, or is that also a different option?
Some farmers, they just strictly want to cultivate. This is all they know. They don't want to go through all the paperwork. They don't want to have to worry about bringing their product from one end to the other, to
Mm-hmm.
their end user. And so some farmers just strictly want to grow. They're growers. They just want to get through the process of getting their farm legal. And then what we have is a distribution company that can then come in and take their harvest for them and do the remaining legwork, which is the drying, trimming, processing, and getting it sold to an end user. And then there are other farmers who, hey, I want to take it from the beginning to the end. So I do want to have a vertically integrated model
Mm-hmm.
so that a lot of that income is coming back to me and not just from growing. But
Absolutely.
the bigger companies, they do want they basically, like I had said before, they
Yeah.
want to be vertically integrated and supply their own
Yeah.
products.
We're gonna come in a second to your properties you're selling. Before that, concerning the distribution network, if I'm a farmer and I just only want to cultivate, I only want to to focus on my expertise. How does that is a functioning distribution network around in California already, which I could directly have access to, or would I need to start from scratch concerning that topic?
Yeah, so there are many distributors that became licensed that are operating in a way that will serve the cannabis industry. So they'll come, like I said, they'll come harvest your product. They'll
Hmm.
come pick your manufacturing oils up and they'll take them to the end user because they have that distribution license to transport it all over the state of California. There's also a smaller distribution license that basically allows you as the farmer or the manufacturer to take only your product from your farm or your facility directly to your end user. And that is all monitored through software systems
Hmm.
so that it makes sure, it makes sure it's going through legal channels. But the
Absolutely.
distribution companies, there's many out there that are licensed that that was their business model. We're just going to be a distribution company. We'll have the armored trucks because they're not only transporting product, they're transporting money. They're collecting, you know, they're paying for the product they're picking up. They're collecting the taxes on the product they're picking up because it's their responsibility to get those taxes paid to the state of California if they're operating as a distributor.
Okay. Super interesting and
A lot to think about.
wow, that's yeah, no, it definitely is. Um, what would you suggest if someone says, okay, actually, it's a lucrative business. It most probably the profit margins are much higher than selling tomatoes or potatoes, I assume.
Yeah.
What would you suggest someone who says, okay, I would like to enter into this business. I would like to try it on my own. What are most probably also obstacles and things they should definitely take care of and before jumping into that business?
Um, so if they have, if they have funding, that's half the battle. Or if they have aligned themselves with an investor who has the funding, um, that's the most important thing. It's going to take funding to get you through the process, whether you're farming, manufacturing, packaging, distribution, doing an edibles line with oils. So basically, it just boils down to have the funding and then make sure that you are connecting yourself with a legally compliant property.
Hmm.
And then once you connect yourself with a legally compliant property, then you go through the licensing process, which, if you are not familiar with, it's very important to get yourself connected with the resources of a proven advisory service that can actually take you all the way through the licensing process successfully.
Hmm.
Um, there are some people, unfortunately, who call themselves consultants, um, and they take advantage of the lack of knowledge in the industry,
Hmm.
and they don't really get these groups or the participants in the system through the licensing process as promised, and that can be a lot of wasted time and money. So having the right resources is super important. Having the right funding is very important, and being able to do your due diligence on the permits and the licensing is key.
And obviously working with a professional person who really knows his stuff or her stuff. Yeah.
Absolutely. And, not everybody's going to have the answers. We're a new industry. And my main my main message that I try to get across is that even if I don't know the answer, because we have such a complex system here in California, we're going to go find it. We're going
Yeah.
to talk to the cannabis planning department or the right resources, because it's important to know exactly where you are in the process of being licensed and permitted for
Yeah.
the property you're about to purchase.
Yeah, and in the first place, you also say, I don't know yet, but I will figure it out. And some people say, yeah, this is like this, but in fact, it doesn't even
And
is not even correct. Okay, yeah,
yes, and like you had said before, things change, so it's really good to be able to make those phone calls, do your extra research, reach out to the resources that have great references to make sure that you are in fact getting exactly what is being said to you, what you're purchasing.
yeah. No, because I also even think that it's not even enough to only have like this kind of access of expertise like you have during the beginning or during the purchase of the land. I think you have to have like an ongoing, very strong partnership or contact who all the time advises you, who's all the time on top of the new regulations and might help you through a new application for a new certification, etc., etc. So this should, or if someone says, no, I want to do the job on my own, I have the time, I want to put in the time, okay, go for it, but be conscious that it's going to be necessary to definitely have a time budget of that which you have to invest in order to be compliant.
Exactly. Yeah,
Okay.
exactly.
You also know a little bit about the taxes concerning the recreational one, so the hemp. Tell us a little about the taxes which are right now applicable for growing hemp.
So the taxes are based on the municipality that you're in, and as I had said before, each municipality made their own rules and regulations and decided on their tax base. We've already had some municipalities who realized that they were, they were creating a huge turnover rate in their communities with the cannabis industry because the taxes were just too high. And so those businesses left for other municipalities where the tax rates were lower. So there really is no standard tax rate. It's just up to where you're doing business. What city are you in? What county are you in? And then you go research, okay, what are they charging here? Some are charging as high as 10%. Some started at 10% and are now down to 8%. They've gone down to 8%. Now they're thinking, well, maybe we should lower it to 5%, because the taxes can be very hefty for these cannabis operators, and it's kind of a shame, because once you've paid all this money and spent all this time to get licensing, and your profit margins are kind of being beat up by the high tax rates, it's very frustrating.
Mm-hmm. And we're talking gross. We're talking net profit taxes.
We are talking gross profit.
Yeah.
And then they are basically taxed. They're taxed all the way down the line. It's very hard to explain, but they're taxed all the way down the line. So if I'm growing, I'm taxed when I go to harvest. When it goes down the line to the distributor, there's another tax. When it gets to the dispensary, there's another tax. And then the dispensaries have their taxes on top of what the product is being sold for. So I'm not an expert in it. I just see the different fluctuations in each market. And I see that it definitely needs to be streamlined, and it's making it a little difficult. If you look at other businesses, even, liquor stores and alcohol beverage companies, they're not nearly taxed the way that cannabis is. And so I think we started off very aggressive in that sense. There's still profit margins. It's still better than growing tomatoes and all of that, but it's a huge challenge.
Yeah. Do you have an estimation of the gross profit which some farmers make on cultivating cannabis and hemp?
Yeah, I can give some very basic, very basic guidelines on what. So if you grew outdoor, which means you can grow cannabis in pots or in open beds or in the ground. You can also, outdoors considered hoop house or light depth grows, where you create a hoop house with PVC pipe normally, and then you've got the white plastic cover over it, and then you pull a dark tarp to trick the plant into flowering. That is also considered outdoor, and it's called light depth or hoop house. So if you have 10,000 square feet of grow, you're more than likely going to be able to pull out around 400 plants. And again, I'm not a grower, so don't hold me to this.
Yeah.
But on average, you'll get about 400 plants with about a pound to a pound and a half per plant. So in essence, you may get about 400 pounds from 10,000 square feet out of your grow. An outdoor light depth, depending on the season, it can go as low as $600 a pound, up to $1,200 to sometimes $1,500 a pound. And that is a basic price without the taxation. I'm not sure, because, like I said, each municipality is different, but it's also the demand and supply on the market. When there's a ton at the end of the seasons, at the end of summer and into October, the price tends to go down. When there's not as much, the price goes up. And same with mixed light in a warehouse or commercial greenhouse. You can see that go from anywhere from 1,000 to as high as 3,000, depending on the strains and the quality. But again, it's about the supply and demand. And we do have backups that have occurred since California went legal, because maybe your permit did not get approved in time. Maybe your state permit isn't approved yet. And so we've got very little product on the market, which creates more of a demand and a backup on the product. So it's constantly fluctuating.
Absolutely. Okay. Um, Let us have a look on the properties you have right now on the listings. I always say properties. Obviously, it's those are directly lots. Let's have a look at the first one in Medacino. Walk us a little bit through it in what you're selling there, and I will click through the photographs, through the images, while you're talking through those.
So you're looking at the website with the Mendocino County property?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. So yes, that particular property, the owners actually went ahead, and this happens a lot. They went ahead and got a mixed light permit, which will allow you to put commercial greenhouses on there with climate control and artificial lighting, and that's considered mixed light or indoor. And even though they got a mixed light permit, which would appeal to a buyer who's coming in, because when you have a mixed light grow or commercial greenhouses, you're supplementing with heating, you're supplementing with AC, and that allows you to get more harvest. You can run it perpetually. So you can do cycles pretty much all year because you're supplementing with heating and AC. The guys that are growing outdoor light depth, they usually can pull off 2 harvests. Some pull 3, but more than likely you're going to go through the whole summer season into October, and you're going to pull off 2 harvests. So that particular farm, he obtained a mixed light permit for 20,000 square feet, and he is growing light depth. So if someone buys that farm, they're going to step into a turnkey situation where they can grow 2 harvests a year, or they have the advantage of phasing out of the hoop houses, the outdoor grow, into commercial greenhouses. So they can replace those hoop houses with commercial greenhouses. That may take an upgrade of power. That may take more water storage tanks to be able to conduct a grow mixed light. But it is very appealing to a buyer to be able to say, hey, eventually I can make this farm a farm that grows 4 harvests a year or grows perpetually. You know, my cycles just keep going through. I'm constantly churning out harvest because I'm doing mixed light.
Okay, wow. Um, what about it's super interesting concerning also I think the seasonal aspect. So I would have expected. I mean, that's why it's super. I think important to also have the in-house possibility. Um, what do I have to take care of concerning the location when I'm talking about, okay, purchasing land in order to cultivate hemp?
So for hemp or cannabis?
For hemp.
Okay. So for hemp, you're going to want, um, you know, from what I understand, you're going to want multiple acres because you have to bring in special machines to cut the tough stalk of the hemp plant.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and Colorado has been growing hemp, and they have these modification pieces that fit on their tractors. And so they've already kind of got that um, in surplus out in Colorado. Here in California, we don't have as many of those innovations with our machinery out here quite yet. And so there's a lot of catching up to do. So basically, you're going to want to make sure that what is in your soil, you're going to want to make sure it's organic. So you're growing an organic, pure CBD product if you're doing medicinal.
Mm-hmm.
And then you're going to want to make sure that you have the right irrigation setup, the way the plants are watered. There's different setups. Many different farmers, it's almost like a cook. You have your own recipe. This is the way I like to grow.
Mm-hmm.
This is how I experience success. I do it this way. You'll have another farmer come in and say, no, you got to do it this way.
Mm-hmm.
So everybody's kind of got their different methods of the way they're planting. But the most important thing is the soil and the irrigation. And then, you can grow hemp also in greenhouses. but a lot of hemp is just grown strictly in row crops outdoors.
Mm-hmm.
There is weed abatement, and there's different methods and forms of weed abatement. There's even talk of certain genetics of the hemp CBD plant that can be grown to minimize that weed abatement service that has to be done, whether you're doing it manually or if you're using some type of natural product so that you're not affecting the organic components
Yeah.
of the plant. So there's many different things that need to be done to ensure that you're going to grow that plant that'll have that threshold not exceeding the 0.03% THC.
Yeah.
And then your industrial, same thing, just your water, your irrigation methods, and your soil, and then the machinery to be able to cut those tougher stalks.
Yeah.
Farming equipment. The
Wow.
other thing is you're not going to want to be near a farm that maybe is an apple orchard that would get overspray from their crop onto yours.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to want a cannabis farmer doesn't want you anywhere near him because the winds can carry the cross pollination and ruin the cannabis farm crop, and vice versa. The cannabis farm could ruin the hemp, and you don't want a CBD hemp farm growing next to a CBD industrial farm because again, there's cross pollination issues. And I have spoken with some experts in the industry on the genetics of the plants, and there is some talk and some research about plants that will have just feminine properties, which will minimize that pollination risk. But I don't think we're quite there yet.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of it is kept, very close, secretive, because if you have those correct strains, then you're going to be able to be at the top of the industry, which is very important.
Yeah. Wow. Let's have a look at the other property you also are right now selling in Humboldt.
Yes, that's a cannabis farm. Yep. And he also got his mixed light permit. So his permit is for 12,500 square feet of mixed light. And again, he is growing light depth in the hoop houses. So he does 2 harvests a year. That property is amazing because he also has an industrial shop, which is equipped with growing equipment. So you can do your vegging and your cloning. So you can start your baby plants in there. And then as they get to the mature level of where they're ready to go outside, you can place them in the hoop houses outside. And again, he got a mixed light permit. So if you want to phase out of the hoop houses into commercial greenhouses, that permit will allow you to grow cannabis perpetually all year with your supplemented heating, AC, your lighting, climate control, if you want to go that route. And then he's got an amazing custom house that he built on the property. He's got plenty of water storage. He has a very sophisticated solar battery backup and diesel generator system. It's a battery bank system. It's really sophisticated. So you're running a very clean, energy efficient property there as well. And so he's the owner of that property. He just did a well thought out property.
And this is located in the north. I don't know if I pronounce it correctly, but more or less in the north of California.
It is. So Humboldt goes up to the Oregon border. So it's Northern California, majestic redwoods, the Eel River, the ocean. It's just beautiful up there. And Humboldt is where the start of the cannabis industry began. So it's got amazing culture and amazing people that started this whole cannabis growing movement. And so it's got a lot of history, and it's known for its cannabis, its cannabis products. People love it.
That's great.
Yeah.
I mean, fantastic your story so far. My question is, if people want to contact you, how can they do that, and via which channels?
So my website is 420estates, with an S.net. And my contact information is there. My email is also dana@420estates.net. You can also follow me on Instagram, 420 Estates for You. I have a profile on LinkedIn under my name, Dana Wallace, and you'll see my information there as well. I was involved in a documentary with CNBC with Marcus Lemonis from The Profit. So there's a documentary floating around out there about the whole changing climate of the cannabis industry up in Humboldt. So it was exciting to be part of that. And I also have a new hemp real estate website that I'm working on. It's hemprealestatebroker.com, where you can get some information about how to register as a hemp farmer, and if you're looking for properties that would work for hemp farming, I can help out with that as well. I'm working on some pretty exciting hemp projects here in California also.
Perfect. And also obviously via your profile on Hello Casa, then people can reach out to you as well.
Yes.
Perfect. What are final thoughts you would like to share with our audience?
My final thoughts are that this is a new industry and it's very exciting. The reason that I became so passionate about aligning my brokerage with it when I saw that legalization was going to be voted through here in California is just the whole holistic side of the plant. It's amazing. Nobody gets addicted. There is no overdosing. You don't die from cannabis. And if you don't want the psychoactive effects, which some people do, for chemotherapy and radiation and extreme pain, THC combined with the CBD can be very helpful. But if you're not into the psychoactive effects, you can turn to CBD and all the healing properties that it has. So representing these properties is very important. It can be very lucrative. And as I stated before, you just need to make sure that your due diligence is done and that everything lines up correctly.
Perfect. Dana, I am super, super happy that we conducted this interview. I learned a lot today, to be honest. I have never had... I have never had the opportunity to have such a deep dive into the cannabis industry, and also especially speak with a local expert in California who knows the ins and outs about this industry, about even the permits, the licenses, what to take care of when purchasing, the entire distribution network, also the huge challenges concerning what for taxes apply, because it's totally diverse based on what municipality you're acting on, and also the entire tendencies and trends right now, where the market is moving, and some market dynamics. Still, I think I know maybe 0.1% of everything, because it's. I mean, you know much better than me. I think that it's a huge topic, and there's so much going on right now, and so many trends. I'm fascinated by your story.
Yeah, there's still so much to learn. I learn something new every day, and it is complex, but don't let that scare you. There's ways to figure it out, and it is quite the process. So hopefully I touched on a little bit of it, but yeah.
Absolutely. And I'm super happy that when people reach out to you and talk to you one-on-one, and then you can definitely directly answer some questions one-on-one and down to the point. Perfect.
Absolutely.
Perfect. Dana, I thank you so much for your time today. It's been a pleasure. And thank you so much. And we talk soon.
Thank you so much. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
having me.
Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.